Well, I'm delighted to welcome today's guest, a returning guest as well, Justin Groce from the Restore Clinic. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's been well over a year, probably 14, 15 months since I saw you last, but I am pleased to be back. Thank you so much, Mr. Ross.
No worries. And we met in person, of course, in between times over in the US last year at the Silverback Summit. And this time I thought it'd be great to talk about some of the ancillary medications and treatments that don't get talked about quite as often. TRT often takes center stage.
Yes.
There's so many other things that we can do to help our clients. So where should we kick it off? What about methylene blue is something we talked about on a off-air conversation last time. So do you use it? How does it work? How does it fit into your treatment protocols?
So methylene blue is actually considered an antidote. Give you a little backstory. If I'm not mistaken, it was originally discovered, I think, 1890, 1900, something like that. It's an antidote. Now, what medicine has historically used it for is like support during surgery as a neuroprotective. Also, if somebody undergoes, let's say sometimes when you get anesthesia, one of the worst complications one complication can have is called methemoglobinemia. This is a condition in which your hemoglobin become functionally useless and you don't really get oxygen delivered. So methylene blue has been historically used as an antidote for a condition called methemoglobinemia. Like I said, could be a complication of surgery. Now, in the integrative world, methylene blue is wonderful for improving cognitive function, improving thought process, improving mood. It works as a neuroprotective and prevents neurodegeneration. So you're probably wondering how. That's the mechanism of action. Well, so it works as what's called an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that's used in your nervous system, and it's highly responsible for retaining memory, cognition, thought. In other words, conditions that are characterized by a progressive loss of acetylcholine, such as like Alzheimer's, it's progressive loss. You become cognitively impaired over time, dementias, things like that. Those are characterized by a loss of acetylcholine. Well, methylene blue blocks the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholinesterase. So you are preserving these abundant pools of neurotransmitters in your nervous system, so that prevents cognitive decline. So hence, it does keep you sharper. It's also going to possibly improve your mood because serotonin is also repleted. Serotonin is also maintained as well. The contraindication, though, if you're taking selective serotonin SSRIs inhibitors, you may want to caution not doing so with methylene blue. You may need to dial back your dose, hence why you need to have a provider that is overseeing this. Don't buy it offline. People want to buy it offline with the little droppers, but I don't recommend that. For one, a lot of methylene blue that's bought offline, they are tainted with heavy metals. If you go to a pharmacy, they do quality control to rule out and make sure you are getting actual pure methylene blue. So again, buyer beware. If there's a snippet you want to make from this, to a short, if people buy methylene blue, get it from a pharmacy that does their quality control, because the over-the-counter, the supplement line ones you get online can be tainted with heavy metals. So another thing, methylene blue, it preserves and helps boost mitochondrial function. So we know mitochondria. Everyone calls it the quote-unquote powerhouse of the cell. It is the engine of our cells. Our cells have mitochondria. What do mitochondria do? They make ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Essentially, mitochondria builds energy through electrons for all of your cells. We know that by the time you get 40s, 50s-ish, your mitochondrial function, it declines inevitably. Methylene blue steps in. So methylene blue works as an accessory on the electron transport chain, and that process occurs inside of the mitochondria to, again, produce ATP. So think of it this way. Okay, so methylene blue works kind of like, let's pretend your mitochondria is like an assembly line. You and me, Dr. Ross, we're working on an assembly line. Okay, we're trying to make energy. We're shuttling electrons. Let's say one of us gets sick. So methylene blue works as an accessory. It steps in where one of us aren't doing our job to help make sure that the mitochondria are producing ATP, at the high rate they are. So not only does it facilitate making more ATP, but it also works as an accessory to ATP. So you kind of get a twofold. So yes, it works great on cognitive function. It works great at mitochondrial dysfunction and preserving mitochondrial function. So it's a wonderful thing. Again, you can get it online. I don't recommend that because a lot of those are tainted with heavy metals. Dosing strategy for most people, somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 50-ish milligrams daily. For most people, it's fine. Me personally, 5 milligrams once a day, I feel good. I feel sharp. Cognitively, feel dialed in nicely. It's not quick acting, though. I mean, obviously, just like anything else, it's going to take a while. So if you're going to consider getting on it, have it overseen, give it some time, be patient. Don't think you're just going to take it and be zazzed up. It's not going to work like that. Now, one caveat. One reason I do recommend you work with a professional that actually, facilitates this and oversees this is because, again, it's working the mitochondria. If you get a little too much and you might feel a little jazzed up, because we're augmenting or upregulating that mitochondrial production, that mitochondrial work rate. So that's a possible side effect again. But hey, overall, I think it's a wonderful thing. It's relatively safe when done appropriately.
Wow, incredible. So it can help to prevent some of the dementias maybe that are out there, keep us sharper. Is there an argument then that everybody goes on this over a certain age?
I mean, you could argue that everybody should, assuming that they don't have any contraindications for it. That's the big thing. Accessibility to it also is another thing to consider, because how many providers have you met that know about it or prescribe it? Not many.
Yeah.
There's not a lot. I even in my network, in the integrative, the TRT world, there's not many people who do, and there's not a lot of pharmacies that really offer it as well. So you could argue that a lot of people would benefit from it. I most certainly don't disagree with you, but the accessibility is really what the key that comes into play there.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on then. So what about rapamycin?
So, okay, let's talk about rapamycin. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to these. I kind of like the history of the drugs too. So rapamycin was originally discovered, I believe, in the 1960s, 1970s. Okay, so researchers back then, they were studying Easter Island. They were studying the inhabitants of Easter Island, and they're wondering how could these people live there, these natives live there, and they never develop tetanus. They live there, but they walk barefoot. They don't develop tetanus. Doing soil samples studies, what they discovered was the bacteria called Streptomyces hygroscopicus, I believe it's called, Streptomyces. It lived in the soil. So that bacteria, what it did was it acts as an antifungal and an antibiotic, antimicrobial. So it survives in the soil by producing these different properties, antifungal, antimicrobial properties. Well, what they did was they isolated that, and it turns out that bacteria actually is in the similar drug class as the macrolides, such as like zithromycin, streptomycin, hence the word rapamycin. If you look at the suffix mycin, it's a macrolide antibiotic. Well, they discovered that was the reason why, possibly, that maybe they didn't get it. They don't know if that was in fact why they don't get tetanus, but they did isolate this bacteria. Well, what they discovered was through this bacteria was it works in a pathway called mTOR, mammalian target of rapamycin. I've also heard it referred to as mechanistic target of rapamycin, hence mTOR. So when you use rapamycin, essentially you're balancing this process called mTOR, this mTOR pathway. Now, mTOR regulates what's called geroconversion. In other words, geroconversion is a nice way of saying, well, pathologic or a nice way of saying healthy cells become senescent cells. So all cells will undergo senescence at some point in their life, but by regulating mTOR, you can slow down that cellular senescence. In other words, you can slow down cellular aging. Now, when you take rapamycin, it's kind of like saying you've got all these cells that are healthy, they've converted to senescent cells via geroconversion, and they're not working good. So the problem with the senescent cell is that they become hypersecretory, they hypertrophy, and they affect their neighboring cells. So secretory associated senescence phenotype, or SASP, is how we describe these senescent cells. So that, in other words, they become big, fat, ugly, and dysfunctional. On top of that, what they can do is they can negatively impact the cells in their milieu. So say if you and me and Ross are all sitting and I'm the senescent cell, I'm going to negatively impact y'all and bring y'all into my game. And now y'all are going to be senescent, unhealthy, dysfunctional cells. And then you'll recruit more and more and more. Rapamycin kind of like wipes the slate clean of those senescent, dysfunctional cells. So that's kind of how, in a long-winded way of telling you how rapamycin works, is it wipes the slate clean, from the bad dysfunctional cells, so that the normal healthy cells can still propagate and not become recruited to the dysfunctional side. Hope that makes sense.
Nice. Yeah. And it's in the UK, it is licensed for use after organ transplant. but it isn't licensed as yet for longevity or preventing that cell death or senescence. How about in the US?
In the US, it's 100% off label. Yep. Organ, like post kidney transplant, rejection. That's what it's on label for. Yeah. In the integrative field, like what we're talking about now, it's totally 100% off label. In the dosages, when you're doing like the integrative world, I've seen anywhere from 2 to 10 milligrams. I've actually seen a little bit of literature coming out. There's some literature showing like 6 to 10 and 5 to 10 milligrams is where it seems to be. So I've done anywhere with patients, like anywhere from 2 to 10 milligrams, typically done in like a punctual, like a fashion. In other words, you do it like one time once a week, and then you could do it for like a couple months on, take a break, couple months on, take a break. So you could do it cyclically like that, or with punctual one-time weekly doses. And the reason why is because you're trying to find that balance. You're trying to find that balance between letting cells grow naturally, let them age naturally, but still trying to find the balance between wiping the slate clean of the senescent cells. So that's why we don't want to just keep wiping cells. You don't want to do that because the goal is to get a punctual dose about once a week, wipe some cells, let them grow, wipe, clean, rinse, repeat.
And how does rapamycin typically figure in your treatment pathway? So someone comes to see you, is it they come and see you and say, I want to live to 200, and you go, right, rapamycin, or how does it weave its way in?
Yeah, no one's going to live that long. And what you really want to live past? Realistically, I know I'm getting a little tangential, but when's the last time you saw someone's like 100, 105, and you're like, damn, I want to be like that. They look great. You don't see that. So the goal of this is preventative medicine. It works great into people who are still healthy. And, they're trying to prevent that age-related decline. They're trying to prevent some neurodegeneration, trying to prevent some glycation. People that want to slow down or prevent those age-related diseases. As we get older, we become more insulin resistant. We become more metabolically unhealthy. Our bones become a little more brittle. Our immune system becomes a little bit weaker. Or even photo aging. We start to look older as we get older because our cells are becoming a little slower, a little more dysfunctional. It works great in the capacity that you have people who are just starting to, maybe develop some age-related complications, and then they really want to attenuate that process. Or even like yourself, a healthy gentleman like you, that's like, dude, I feel great. I'm climbing mountains. I've owned multiple businesses. I've got 100, 200 employees. I'm kicking ass. I don't want to slow down. It works great in that capacity as well. So really, it comes down to what is the patient's outlook? What do they want 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? What does their current health status look? And how's that current health status? How's that affecting them at this point? So, always try to meet the patients halfway. If there's one thing, the more I practice, the longer I get, is that there's guidelines we follow, but there's no such thing as like a stratification box of where you must fit and where you must not fit. So I take it by patient case.
Yeah, love that. On a totally different point of view then, if you could, would you like to be immortal?
Me? Absolutely not. No. I've worked with people, even the oldest TRT patient in their 80s. And when I was working in internal medicine, I had patients, 100, 105 years old. And one of the biggest commonalities they all shared was that they've outlived their spouses, they've outlived their friends. And a lot of times they've outlived their kids. And that, to me, I don't want to go to that, live so long that I outlive my children or my, all my spouses, all my friends. It seems very, very bleak, very lonely. It truly does. I want to live as long as God puts me here, and then I'll serve my purpose and I'll hit the dirt. That's my goal, man.
Yeah, I love that. What about so HGH is in the UK and in the US not legal for prescription, but you do have the IGF peptides and the growth hormone secretagogues. There, I think you can prescribe those in the US.
Correct. And you are very correct. The prescribing of growth hormone for quote unquote longevity or disease prevention purposes is completely illegal. It is illegal here in the US. So if people are doing it, you have to demonstrate an actual deficiency, an actual clinical need in order to prescribe it here. None of that. I mean, it's hell expensive. $500 to $900 a month, for some Norditropin or somatropin. That stuff ain't cheap. So yes, in lieu of that, we do have, like you said, we do have the growth hormone secretagogues. One of the most popular ones that we prescribe is called testosterone. It was actually FDA approved in 2009, I believe, 2009, under the name Egrifta. Now, testosterone is a growth hormone secretagogue. So you inject it subcutaneously, ideally, once a day, empty belly, preferably right before you go to bed. I always tell people with any growth hormone secretagogue, whether it's CJC 1295, whether it's ipamorelin, whether it's sermorelin, do it right before you go to bed, because sometimes they can be a little fatiguing. Well, I mean, it's a twofold benefit. For one, you sleep a little better. If it's going to make you go to sleep, then hey, accept the somnolence. And two, growth hormone is primarily produced when you're in deep wave sleep, particularly stage 3, stage 4 of deep wave sleep. So take it before you go to bed, you sleep deeper, and you have greater magnitude of GH pulses while you're sleeping. So what is the benefit of growth hormone secretagogues? Well, the obvious one is you produce more growth hormone, but it's going to, with the production of growth hormone, it's going to have the downstream production of IGF-1 from the liver as well. The benefits of producing growth hormone and IGF-1, soft tissue repair, collagen turnover, collagen synthesis, mobilization of fatty tissue, particularly like subcutaneous, but particularly like visceral fat, omental fat. So that works great, especially if people have fatty liver disease. We're going to mobilize some of that fatty tissue that is adhering to the organs, the visceral fat, which that leads to improvements in your metabolic status, better insulin sensitization, mobilization of lipids. It's going to help combat fatty liver disease. You're going to recover better. Joints hurt less. And overall, you're just going to feel better over time. Your body's going to feel like it heals better, like it should.
Yeah. So everyone needs to be taking that and rapamycin and methylene blue so far.
I don't know if everybody needs to take everything, but if there's a clinical need, a clinical deficiency, if you're exhibiting the signs and symptoms, if your recovery sucks, you're having out of proportion, delayed recovery, delayed soreness, joint pain, wound healing is terrible, then you may want to consider possibly getting evaluated to see if you would be a benefit for it, or it'd be a benefit for you.
You mentioned healing there. How does, say, BPC 157, TP 500, how does that compare to the healing that you could get from testosterone?
So testosterone, you're going to get the metabolic benefits as well. Like I said, there's some studies that show that it can even reduce carotid intimal thickness. It can reduce the actual, development of plaques within the blood vessels. That's one thing you can't really get from a lot of healing peptides. Now, it's funny you mentioned BPC 157, Pendadeca, is because one of the mechanisms of action of how it works, it goes great with a GH secretagogue, because BPC it can actually upregulate growth hormone receptors, especially in ligamentous or tendinous tissues. So say if you have a joint sprain, or you tear something, or you have some soft injury or soft tissue injury, you pull a muscle, by upregulating growth hormone receptors, you're going to get more of the healing benefit from the growth hormone peptide as well. So it's actually excellent timing that you mentioned BPC, because stacking BPC onto a GH secretagogue, they work very well. Now, one of the stark differences, though, is that the healing benefits you get from more of a GH secretagogue, those take longer. They're not as acutely tangible, not as acutely noticeable. Mm-hmm. So when you take the GH secretagogues, it's those things after 2-3 months. Okay, yeah, I recover faster. Things don't hurt as much. I feel a little better. Whereas TB 500, say if you have more of an acute injury, you roll an ankle, and you've got a hike coming up, big climb coming up here in 6 weeks. That's when you don't want to run it better, because you would get more of the acute benefit. BPC also stimulates angiogenesis. So, you're going to get increased blood flow to the damaged tissue as well. So twofold, you're going to increase GH, get better GH response from the actual GH itself, and you'll increase the blood flow to the damaged tissue from the BPC.
Fantastic. Great answer. Thank you. What about NAD? You mentioned that just before we jumped online.
NAD, nicotinamide, adenine dinucleotide. It's essentially like a metabolite of vitamin B3. Okay, so NAD is involved in almost 500 known biological processes. So NAD if I want to describe it in like an elevator talk, what I would say is that NAD also increases the mitochondrial production of ATP. We talked about methylene blue does it as well. So does NAD. Now, NAD is going to increase. I call NAD more like the currency for your cells, because you're going to increase how much energy production your cells can actually have from NAD. Now, NAD, one of the things about NAD is when you're about 20-ish, that's when your peak levels are, naturally. By the time you get 40, 50-ish, it's speculated you may have half of that. So that's one of the reasons why we speculate that age-related diseases occurs, is because of mitochondrial depletion, mitochondrial dysfunction, and loss of fuel production from mitochondria to power all the cells in the respective organs. So we speculate that age-related things such as like osteoporosis, sarcopenia, metabolism just not working as it used to, metabolic health declines, fatty liver occurs, things like that. We speculate is because the mitochondria in those respective organs are not able to work like they used to do, and they lose their energy pools. That's where NAD comes into play. What we're doing is our goal is to restore the cellular fuel source, the cellular currency that our mitochondrial actually draws from. And by doing so, we can try to offset the decline of those respective organs' cells.
Wow, yeah, that makes sense. And do you notice a difference of whether it's oral, intramuscular, or IV?
Awesome question. Yes, IV, you'll notice it more acutely. You will. For most people, it's not feasible though to get IVs once a week, once every 2 weeks. For one, you're looking at a couple $100, and two, it's going to take you, a few hours out of your day. Got to go to the clinician's office, get a drip for 1 or 2 hours, then go do your thing. For a lot of people, that's just not realistic. It's not logistically feasible. So for other people, I would say do the injectables, whether they want to do sub-Q or IM. Those work wonderful. It does. Now, I would put orals last, just because the molecule is not really, it's not as good digested. It's not stable digested. So for people that absolutely want to they want to increase their NAD stores, but they don't want to inject, then you can do like NMN, or you can do like NR. Okay, so nicotinamide mononucleotide or nicotinamide riboside. So those are different options you can take. So like NMN is like a precursor. It's like 2 steps up. So you got NMN here. NMN converts to NR. NR converts to NAD. You can do that as an option. You can. Those are not going to be as tangibly felt. Those are things you're going to have to just get on, stay on long-term, indefinitely before it starts building up. How long that takes for you, I don't know. Everyone has different conversion rates. Everyone has different depletion rates of enzymes that consume NAD. Also, that'd be contingent on oxidative stress. Oxidative stress can actually inhibit the conversion of NMN to NR and then NR to NAD. So there's other confounding factors that go into play with how long or how effective the orals will be. You could also take nicotinic acid, or you could also take niacinamide. Again, those are B3. We're talking about the vitamin B3 and its respective metabolites. Those are different options for the orals if you want to do it again. Again, if people want to do the oral version, NMN, NR, nicotinic acid, or niacinamide. But I always give the caveat, I don't know how long it would take to get good, adequate levels. I don't know how efficacious it'll be, and that'll be also determined on your oxidative health status and your the enzymes and your biological conversion status as well.
Brilliant. I can't remember which one of the precursors it was I took years ago. Nicotinamide maybe, but it had a flush with it, and your head felt like it was going to explode.
It's probably like streptomycin. It may have been just streptomycin. It may be like kind of burn and itchy a little bit.
Yeah,
uncomfortable. Yeah,
exactly.
But I always tell people the gold standard is IV or injection. Those are the way to do it. And again, this is something that you would plan on being on indefinitely. One mistake a lot of people will do is they'll buy like a month of the NMN or whatever they'll take, and it didn't work. Well, these are things that we're trying to offset the dysfunction of our cells at the cellular level. Something like that, something that complex, is not something you just pop a pill and you just fill it and you're Superman. It doesn't work like that. These are things you do to prevent age-related decline and age-related diseases, so that you don't have mitochondrial dysfunction down the road. You don't become insulin resistant down the road. That's the whole point of these. That's another reason why we refer to these as like the quote unquote anti-aging or longevity. That sounds kind of biohacking. I'm not a big fan of that term. I just like to refer to this as more as like disease prevention type things.
Yeah, I like that, disease prevention. That's a great terminology. What about metformin? Where does that figure into your processes?
Remember I was talking about rapamycin works kind of like it's an mTOR inhibitor. It can bounce the senescent cell versus healthy cell. It works on the balance between healthy and senescent cells. Metformin also does work like an mTOR inhibitor, albeit not as robust as rapamycin. So you could call it like Rapalite, maybe. I don't know. We'll go with that name. So it does work like an mTOR inhibitor. It can help prevent the geroconversion of healthy cells to senescent cells. But we know the obvious benefits of metformin is that it's an insulin sensitizing agent, it's a glucose disposal agent, and it blocks the GI absorption of glucose. So what we're doing there is we're preventing someone from developing insulin resistance or fatty liver disease. What we're preventing, the decline of metabolic health is what we're doing. So that's kind of how it works into the quote unquote the longevity or disease prevention space. It's pretty common that more people are accepting it as their toolbox to prevent disease. They'll take 250, 500 of metformin ER once a day, so that they don't develop fatty liver, they don't become insulin resistant, so they can get a fine little balance between those healthy and senescent cells.
Yeah, absolutely. What about naltrexone?
Yes. So naltrexone, interestingly enough, it also works kind of like an mTOR inhibitor. It does have some mTOR inhibition properties, but we use naltrexone primarily in the Hashimoto's patients, the autoimmune patients. That it works great with them. You get people with Ehlers-Danlos. You got people rheumatoid arthritis. You got people whatever. It works for a plethora of autoimmune and rheumatological things. So naltrexone. Let me tell you how it actually works. So when you take naltrexone, it's going to increase the production of what's called opioid growth factor. But what's happened is you'll take more, and then opioid growth factor will get displaced from the receptors it's bound to. The newly displaced opioid growth factor needs more receptors. So what it's doing is it's producing OGF. They're getting displaced. They need new receptors. Getting displaced. They need receptors. And with each cycle of this bind, displace, upregulate, bind, displace, upregulate, you are getting an increased immunomodulatory response. This is going to augment the way your immune system responds with these bind, cycle, displace repeats. On top of that, it also increases what's known as beta endorphin, which also blunts pain and increases your immune system's response as well. So you can see how with using LDN, low dose naltrexone, what we're doing is we're augmenting our body's ability to create the immune response so that we can help offset the autoimmune processes. And again, like I said, it also works loosely like an mTOR inhibitor as well. It has some very mild properties in that department.
So it increases the opioid receptors so you feel less pain. Is that right?
Opioid, it works on it produces opioid growth factor is what it does. So it'll stimulate the production of opioid growth factor. They need a new home. So they'll make more OGF receptors. They'll bind it, more receptors, and now we're getting this subsequent production of increased opioid growth factor. And that right there, the opioid growth factor, OGF, that's what's really going to stimulate our immune system to keep kicking up and blunt pain and help speed up healing as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I can definitely see how that's going to work in the
low doses.
Yeah.
Low doses though. Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. We've used it in Lyme disease patients as well. I don't think y'all have Lyme over there, do you? In the UK?
Not really. No.
I mean, I figured not, unless some of the birds with the ticks, they're carried overseas, but I don't think it's geographically tracked. But Lyme disease started in a place called, I think it was Lyme, Pennsylvania. It's a bacteria called Borrelia burgdorferi, and it's a tick-borne illness. So people used to not believe in it because it was originally found in Pennsylvania, but birds, they migrate across the U.S. So now it's becoming more prominent in the lower, the Southeast, like Tennessee, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, things like that. One of the problems with Lyme is for some people, subset of people, they develop what's called chronic Lyme. So they get the chronic fatigue response that occurs. They're getting that. You've probably heard of, like, some people get post-COVID, they get that chronic fatigue response where their immune system just kind of ragged out. The immune cells, the mitochondria of the immune cells, they're burnt out, they're ragged out. That's where things like LDN, low dose naltrexone, comes into play. The key is, though, with low dose naltrexone is the name. You got to keep the dose low, because if you use a higher dose, like a alcohol abuse or opioid abstinence dose, like 50 milligrams, you're going to blanket. You're going to get too much saturation of the opioid growth factor receptors. Too much saturation is you're not going to get that bind replace receptor upregulation. That's why I want to keep the dose low, like 1 to 5, 1 to 6 milligrams. But yes, we've used that in Lyme disease patients, rheumatological patients, chronic fatigue, post-COVID patients, and we use some people just for general wellness. They may have like chronic arthritis, or they want to prevent from getting sick, things of that nature.
Yeah. But what about low dose Deca, nandrolone for joint pain? Does that have a figure? Does that work? Read a few papers. That seems to be quite popular.
We don't really prescribe nandrolone, but the underlying principle is that nandrolone, it does increase water retention. We know that it does. I mean, even one of the principal side effects is that it's going to increase water retention, but a good amount of that does get pulled to the joint capsules. So it does provide you a good lubricating effect. There's a misconception, though, with prescribing nandrolone. The bodybuilders just say you need a 2-to-1 ratio. That's bullshit. It's just made up. A lot of guys can easily get away with 20, 30, 40 milligrams, something small like that, once a week, and they'll still get a good joint lubricatory effect. But it doesn't necessarily heal you per se, but it does provide a pain blunting response. Because, again, let's say you have osteoarthritis. Your cartilage is gone. You're not getting that articular, the lubrication. It's going to pull some joint capsule space so that you get a little bit of separation. You get a little more gliding of the articulating surfaces, though. But once you come off it, I mean, it will come back, though. You'll experience the pain again, though. So it can be, a good pain symptom relief. And we've used it in the past in patients, have fibromyalgia, degenerative disc disease, bad arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. We've used it in some people like that. But again, it's not fixing the problem. It's not addressing the immunological upregulation. It's mainly just lubricating the pain, lubricating the joints.
Yeah, love it. Thank you for the explanation. What, out of all of the medications and things we've talked about today, can I ask you, do you take any of these?
I'm so sorry, Ross. It cut out for a second. Can you repeat the question, sir?
Yeah. Out of all of the things we've talked about today, can I ask you a personal question? Do you personally take any of these?
So I'm a TRT guy. I'm on TRT. I'm 40. I've been on it since I was 30. Love the stuff. I think it's wonderful. It's an absolute life changer, absolute game changer. It's completely transformed my life from being a shell of myself to now owning a few businesses, being a father, and just enjoying life and being more ambitious. TRT is great. It's a wonderful piece. If you have a hormonal deficiency, it can be one of the best things. Now, to some of the ancillary stuff you're talking about, NAD, I love it. I take NAD, methylene blue. I try to keep, if there's one thing that I want to prevent, that'd be cognitive decline. In cognitive decline, a lot of that is predicated on how functional your mitochondria are, especially in the brain. You got to think the brain has some of the most dense, robust amounts of mitochondria in the body is in the brain, the nervous system. So you got to keep that stuff sharp. Now, I always tell patients this, though. You cannot out biohack your lifestyle. You can't. You cannot. When you got your sleep, you are guaranteed you're getting 7-8 hours of sleep a night. And I know there's a lot of guys out there say, I can get away with 4. Getting away is not the same thing as actually utilizing it or receiving benefit. I can get away with 4, but I mean, I'm taking something else on the back end. And that's me as a father, me as a business owner, me as a clinician. Something is not to give. When you are just getting away with something, you're giving something up. So first of all, make sure you get your sleep dialed in. You have to. I don't care who you are. You have to get 7-8 hours sleep. It's one of the best biohacks. If there's a pill that could give you the same benefit as an 8 hours night of sleep, that would probably be the number one best pill in the world. It'd probably solve the vast majority of disease processes out there. Productivity would go through the roof. So get your sleep. nutrition, you've got to eat good food. I don't, again, these are simple things you can do to enhance your life. Sleep, training, nutrition, optimize your hormones, get in the sun, meditate, manage your mental stress, those things. You do those things. You do those centerpieces. Venn diagram. Here's all the different lifestyle things you're doing. You're in the center. Then if you feel like there's room for improvement, then you can consider adding these other things in to really enhance your performance. It's kind of like a thing like this. Say if you can run 100 meters in 10 seconds. Okay. You focus on the training, the nutrition, the sleep, the lifestyle. Let's say you're trying to get from 10 seconds to 9.95 or 9.9. That little sliver of the whole pie, the whole pie graph, that's where these ancillaries comes into play. So if you think taking the ancillary is going to eat up 95% of that pie graph, you're wrong. It's going to eat a sliver of it, and then it fits into that little spot after you filled in the rest of the pie through all the other things you can do.
I love that, yeah, because I think a lot of people are thinking methylene blue or HGH or whatever is going to take them from a 20-second to a 10-second race.
20 to 99, you know what I mean? Very small, very, very, very small. Yeah, and again, a lot of people, it's an old saying, but a lot of people, like, they step over pennies. You know what I mean? They're like stepping over nickels to pick up pennies. Things like that. Like the little things you can do that are free that you should be doing is what needs to be the baseline, and then you can spring in other stuff. And that's my gripe with the term biohacking. I think a lot of people try to out biohack their lifestyle when in reality they could have saved thousands of dollars. They could have saved lots of disappointment and heartache and all that if they would have just really focused on what they can do that's in front of them, that's free. Then you can add the stuff in. Yes.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Brilliant. Are there any, I'm going to use the word biohacks then, are there any biohacks that we haven't covered that you think we should talk about?
To be honest, no. Those are like I think one of the, if there's something I truly want to call a biohack, it would be HRT. It really would be. Nothing is going to get your mitochondria dialed back in like getting your testosterone and thyroid dialed in. I mean, seriously, getting your testosterone, getting your hormones replaced, getting your thyroid dialed in, that's going to get your mitochondria back online, probably better than anything else. It's a nice way of saying, yeah, getting them back online. I like that. Yeah. That is probably one of the best biohacks. If I'm going to accept the word biohack, I will say HRT is that. There it is. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Justin, it's been a pleasure as always. It's been a great conversation. Loved listening to all of those descriptions.
Thank you.
If people have been listening and they want to get in touch with you to talk to you about some of these things, where can they find you?
Yes. It's easy. TheRestoreClinic.com, www.therestoreclinic.com. Instagram, our user handle is @TheRestoreClinic. TikTok, where we actually put a lot of content on TikTok. User handle is @TheRestoreClinic, and youtube.com/@TheRestoreClinic. So yes, thanks for the shout out. And you can even see the sound in the background, although I should have done a mirror flip on it so you can see it the right way. But yeah, that's that. Google The Restore Clinic, you'll find us.
Love it. Justin, thank you so much and have a brilliant rest of your day. Take care.
My pleasure.